Check, check, 1, 2. There we go. Hey guys, sorry for the delay. Give me one more second and I'll pop on screen. We'll get going. Derp. There we go. I was explaining everything and there was no audio. Thanks, Victoria, for letting me know. Oops. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Second here. Okay, so to reiterate, sorry, I was showing you guys imagery and you guys couldn't hear anything. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Sorry. Sorry, I was so busy showing the stuff on the other, moving it from one screen to the other was covering up the chat, so I didn't see that you guys were telling me. My bad. All right, quick recap for what I was showing you. There was a special, a documentary called Dinosaur back in the 80s, and it was hosted by Christopher Reeve, some of the images I was showing you earlier. And you can purchase the now cut of only the stop animation that was in that documentary that was done by Phil Tippett, who is an acquaintance of mine and who is someone who's a deep personal hero of mine. And in my childhood, this documentary that had this monoclonius in it was something that blew my mind as a child. And it's the work, his original work that was called Prehistoric Beast was a short film. That is this one that I flashed before. And so his work really just amazed me as a child. And in the documentary Dinosaur, hosted by Christopher Reeve, they had all these intercut stop animation sections, like segments that show dinosaurs kind of living as they would in their natural environment. And I knew it wasn't real, but at the same time, I was like, it looks so real. So it made me curious, like how they did it. And I didn't get much information at the time. I just knew it was stop animation. But then I learned later on when Jurassic Park came out a few years later that Phil was involved in it and that he had originally done all this work before, and this is what got him to work on Jurassic Park. And that's what they used for, they used him and his team with an input device called the DID, the Dinosaur Input Device. Some of you may know if you look up the making of Jurassic Park. It's like an armature of a stop animation puppet, but with a bunch of sensors on it, I guess sort of gyroscopes or some sort of motion sensor that would correlate to three-dimensional coordinates for every piece of where each sensor was on the skeleton of these armatures for these dinosaurs. And that would then be fed into the computer, and they then use the stop animation data to drive the rig, the skeleton internally on their end on, I don't know, I don't think it was Softimage. I think it was something else before that. Probably was Alias. It was Alias, yeah, that's right. But they used that to drive the internal skeleton of the dinosaurs, and then they had other artists come in and help, clean it up or advance it or whatever. So anyway, that was Phil's involvement, and also he did a lot of creative direction for how the animals would move, and helping them understand how the camera should probably move and how the weight of the animal should be distributed. So he had a lot of input on the original Jurassic, and I think they kept him on as an advisor for all the future Jurassics. But anyway, so he has been just a huge inspiration to me since I was a kid, and through our love for dinosaurs. So I was showing you other images of this puppet from the original. So this is one of the screenshots from that documentary, and that's a stop animation puppet, which is now in pretty much disarray. Like, I've seen the actual puppet. Phil had it on display at his studio for years. I think he sold it now, or has just taken a lot of those things down. But that was this. And this is all those shots from that documentary, which you guys did not hear me talk about before. So anyway, sorry. I muted the mic when I went to go grab my dog and some other things. So anyway, so this is the specific monoclonius that I'm going to be recreating as an homage to Phil's work. So okay. Cool. All right, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer anything you might have, and we'll go from there. So I think last time I just Z-remeshed it. I gave myself a decent distribution. There's some weird stuff here. You always get stars in certain areas, though, so it's like you can't really avoid some of that. Radial encoders. Ah, that's what it was. Yeah, I think ILM used to use Softimage exclusively for forever, and then but I know that I remember because I met Steve Spaz too, Steve Williams. He's the guy who created the original T-Rex skeleton. And if you haven't looked it up, it used to be called something else, but now his documentary is called Jurassic Punk, and it's a great documentary about how he really was the catalyst for the leap into organic CGI. He worked on the original Terminator 2 for like the liquid metal T1000, of course, and other effects there. And then he worked on the Abyss, I think, as well. And then he did Jurassic, and he did the T-Rex, and that's what really got his career going. Or I should say, almost in a sense, ended it in some ways because he left after that, I think. But yeah, his work really, really just defined our generation, I think, for the standard of CGI. And so he had a rough road, though. He wasn't, I shouldn't say wasn't, he isn't someone who necessarily follows all the rules or is like most, he can be abrasive and very opinionated on things. But I agree with most of what he said or thinks, so I don't find him to be so abrasive. I find him to be refreshing. But, to each their own. But because of his views and stances and strong just opinion about things in life and his attitude toward everything, he wound up sort of leaving ILM, and then so look up his documentary. It's incredible, Jurassic Punk. It's a great kind of coverage of the man's life and his influence on CG and culture, the arts, like a lot of things that people don't know he was behind or how he designed them. But it's pretty insightful, to say the least. Trying to find like a good profile shot here. Even though this one's blurry, I think this is actually the best I'm going to find right now. It's these web images, they're like a WE, what are they, weeb something. I hate it when they don't. Why don't people just save it as JPEGs? The heck, make our lives easier. Then you have to go and convert it, and it takes more time. All right, so it's a different one, but all right, so this is what I'm kind of referencing over here on the side. Sonnet, sorry, yeah, I'm not Ashley. I don't know why they have her previous name. They have a previous streamer, I think, on there. Let me see if I can text Kyle here from Maxon, I guess now is his name. It used to be Pixelogic. All right, just text it and let him know. All right. Anyway, you're learning ZBrush, first following full character training videos, and then study anatomy. What would your advice be to learn structure, workflow? Hey, no worries, man. Or gal. What my advice be for learning structure? Well, by structure, do you mean like anatomy, or do you mean structure of like how to model something? What do you exactly mean by learning structure? Oh, my name's Daniel, by the way. I don't know, is that cut off on the stream, or does it show that on the feed? Oh, it does, yeah, at the top and the bottom. Yeah. So my name's up there. It's just not the title of the video, unfortunately, because the system didn't update, I guess. Yeah, you can call me Daniel, not Ashley. But yeah, what do you mean by structure exactly? Like structure for learning, structure for anatomy, structure for learning the UI? Like, what kind of structure? 3D modeling for games. Okay. Well, you're going to want to learn clean topology. Like, you're going to have to model in clean topology. And doing that in ZBrush, I'm not sure if it's improved with ZRemesher in 2023, because I'm still using 2022. I have to upgrade. But generally, you could ZRemesh and might have clean top. Most of the time, you want to retopologize in something like Maya. Or if you just want a box model from the beginning in ZBrush, you can do that too using the ZModeler toolbrush. But you want to make sure that you have clean topology to start. Once that's established, then you can jump into ZBrush and really get sculpting and getting all your details to create your maps that you would then put on your low cage mesh. That would be for that. So to learn that, I mean, you'd have to look up. Yeah, you want to learn up basic modeling, I would say first and foremost, and choose your poison. You know, whether you want to learn it through Maya or Blender. Blender's really coming up now, and it seems like I'm starting to feel pressure to start learning it because it's it's free. It's very it's constantly evolving and growing faster, I think, in some ways than Maya now, because it's open source. So yeah, I would say that either one of those would be good to learn, but still as an industry standard. It's funny. I was talking with another younger 3D artist yesterday, and we were chatting about how kind of funny it was that if you didn't know Maya and you just knew Blender back in the day, you were kind of like, you're not a real artist. People would jokingly be like, we'd think in the back of our heads like, you're not really legit. You're just you know, a wannabe, which is totally condescending and mean to say. But I mean, at the same time, it kind of felt like people felt or thought that way previously, largely, and probably still do in some cases, because a lot of studios aren't looking for someone who knows Blender. They're looking for someone who knows Maya and plus, you know, a bunch of other apps. Um, Excuse me. So yeah, when it comes to that, industry standard is still Maya, ZBrush, or 3ds Max, Substance Painter, you know, you name it. So also for anyone curious, what I did is I just did this selection here of the horn, select it, hide it, and then split hidden. Because generally things that you're going to want as separate materials, or even just if you're doing a 3D print, in this case, I'm going to 3D print this eventually. You want pieces that are either be separate resin or separate materials, or even if you just want to paint them differently, sometimes it's nicer to have them. And also when you're printing, you want to have something printed separately so you don't have supports on everything. You can put supports on the bottom of something like this. In this case with the horn, I could literally put supports. I could, since it is from larger to smaller, that's perfect for printing on any printer. Like if you're using an FDM printer, you'd print it basically like that. Like that's the orientation you'd have it on a FDM printer. That's like a glorified hot glue gun on a gantry. But if you're printing on a Formlabs printer, it's basically the same thing but opposite. So then you would have the horn oriented upside down because the build plate goes down into the vat of resin, and then laser hits it from underneath, and then it pulls out. So in this case, you'd want to have your supports coming down and hitting the bottom of the horn, which then you could sand away. Or, you know, now with the newest version of Preform, I believe the supports break away even easier than ever. So you'd have very little cleanup to do anyway. But in this case, you wouldn't have to worry about any kind of little pitting or nodules or anything. So you could just sand it down without having to worry about anyone seeing that part, because you then insert it into the top of the nasal area and glue it, and you'd be good to go. But then you could easily paint it, you know, or in this case, I'd probably want to print it in a clear resin and then paint it with a very light kind of yellow because of, sorry, I'm wrong here. Because of the way the horn here, you can see clearly they, like Phil made this in some sort of clear resin because it catches light and it has a subsurface scattering to it, which is really beautiful. So to imitate that, I would want to do this in clear resin and then just give it like a nice yellow tint, some wash, you know, and then just sort of dirty it up a little bit with some sort of smoky blacks to give it that kind of weathered, you know, worn in kind of look. So yeah. The man was a dude, yeah. Abyss, Terminator 2, The Mask, yep. Alias was, yep. Uh, yeah, exactly. Him and Dennis Murin, they definitely had contention for sure. Yeah. Oh, and because the other thing too is I think Dennis was, and I love Dennis. I mean, I'm so grateful. He has one of my Raptors actually that I gave. Glenn McIntosh gave it to him from me as like a birthday gift to him, which was really cool. But yeah, Dennis and him locked heads for sure. I think because Dennis was just being safe with everything, and Steve was way more just like go getter. Just let's just experiment. Let's just try. Let's make things. You know, let's go crazy. And I love that kind of cavalier, you know, very kind of enthusiastic, excited, passionate, crazy, hardworking mentality, because that's me. For better or worse, it's probably not very healthy at times, but that's I kind of operate in the same brain space. So yeah. So I did something wrong here. I should have done is close holes. So there we go. And now subdivide up a bunch, and then do the same thing on this. So this is my baseline lowest topology. So like the toes, I think the claws have might have different material too. Nah, but I mean, they're solid. They're not like you never get any subsurface scattering through them or anything, so I don't think it matters that they would be part of the mesh or not. Oh, this, um, yeah. Um, Sonnet, you're saying you've been learning for 1 year, okay? Uh, Ghazi D, you're asking about what about 3ds Max? What do you want to know about 3ds Max? I'm no expert in it. I don't really like it actually. um, Blender good for hard surfaces, but don't like it for sculpting. Yeah, yeah, exactly. People say if you want to work for a company, you must learn my standard. Yeah, I mean, I still advise learning Maya if you want to work in a company. But you know, the industry is always changing, so it depends what kind of industry you want to be a part of and what company you want to be a part of. But generally, yeah, it's still advisable that you would probably know Maya for sure as a baseline. Um, yeah, so I'm just going to subdivide up a little bit and start actually adding in some of these textures and elements and start defining sort of, you know, major shapes. Actually, I'm going to move this behind here and do what I often do, which I know is not like, it's better to bring an image in sometimes as an image plane and then mess with your opacity. But here I'm just doing this kind of quick and dirty just to get approximate sizing. That's better. I'm just using the see-through slider up here at the top. And I'm just going to select the head. And I'll put on perspective, and I have it at focal length of about 50 millimeter lens approximation, just because that's where a lot of things are shot in. 50 millimeters, for those who don't know, if you look up standards of filmmaking and whatnot, you'll find that 50 millimeters is so common and so beloved that it's actually referred to as the nifty 50. What photographers and videographers will call a lens is a nifty 50 because it's something that's such a kind of a gold standard for shooting things that look close to the human eye's perception of reality. It fluctuates between 35 millimeter and 50 millimeter. So like depends on, you know, but obviously the more longer length, longer millimeters, some increasing number of millimeter length lens you have, the more it compresses an object or a face. So if you ever look up video footage of like 18 millimeter or 5 millimeter to like 100 millimeter or 300 millimeter, the face of one person will look drastically different based upon it almost becomes orthogonal when you have like a several hundred millimeter lens. Think of like an orthogonal view in 3D, and that's basically what a high millimeter lens will make reality look like versus a low millimeter lens. You go down to super low and it starts to everything looks fisheye, kind of like how you look when you're looking down at your iPhone camera and it doesn't make yourself look very good. It's largely because they haven't, for whatever reason, designed lenses that are forward facing that will simulate or compress a longer length lens. And my guess is it probably has something to do with scale and distance of the lenses within such a small compressed area. I'm guessing. I don't know. There's probably some sort of other explanation for it, but you'd think by now that they would have, with all the vanity that we see on social media, that people would have demanded that they use a better, more flattering lens on the front end of our phones. But who knows? So I'm seeing that I got kind of the scale wrong because I was just eyeballing this when I first started doing this. But it's not too off, I guess, as long as I get these areas right. I'm gonna make a little kind of happy compromise here. All right. So I got my move brush selected, got symmetry on, so I'm just gonna pull the beak forward a little bit. Down. And it really seems like this crest is really kind of flattened against the neck. Really brought it back. It's kind of interesting. Like when a million polys in Blender, my PC goes crazy. Definitely in ZBrush, I think Blender is only a game code. Yeah, there's definitely limitations for most 3D apps that ZBrush has no problem with when it comes to millions of polygons, which is still another great reason to stay in ZBrush as much as possible. Like I try to stay in ZBrush as much as I can, no matter what. It's my home. It's where I feel most comfortable in 3D, because it was kind of my gateway drug into 3D, so to speak. It's really what got me passionate and interested in working in 3D, because it was the most user friendly to me as far as the interface and being able to focus on the viewport of just like digital clay. That's what I really wanted to be able to enjoy from the very beginning, but nothing came close until ZBrush came along. I'd pick up when I was younger. There was no massive proliferation of information on 3D that was helpful on YouTube so much. So I had to learn from an online class website, which was at the time known as ZBrush Workshops, which doesn't exist anymore. And then I was later offered a job to work with them, and that's how I got to meet Paul Gabry, and I was helping moderate his class. So I got to learn ZBrush very quickly, and I was getting paid to learn it because I was helping with moderation and content creation for the site. And yeah, it really kind of accelerated my learning and also allowed me to make a living a little bit while I was doing it. So yeah, that was a kind of an ideal, and it's kind of what I tell any student to do now. It's like if you in any way can figure out a way to get paid to learn what you want to do, that's now you're kind of gaming the system. Like that's the most ideal position to be in, is you're getting paid to learn as opposed to just learning and then doing something else to make ends meet while you're trying to learn your craft that you love. So if you can ever find an opportunity to be an assistant teacher of some type, whatnot, and you're learning, you'll basically be able to sit at the feet of experts and learn from them daily. And that should, if you put in the work, it's like you can't be lazy. Obviously, like I worked hard. I remember when I was taking those courses, I would spend just all night and day in front of my computer, learning ZBrush, going through the modules, putting in the work, wanting to make things beautiful, wanting to make things like, aesthetically very shocking and appealing. And so I would do whatever I could to learn, what it took to get from point A to point B. Yeah. So that's part of the key to getting your foot in the door anywhere, is having a great portfolio and just having excellent work to show, because you're competing with people such as myself and many others. Obviously not directly in a sense, but you are you're looking for someone to hire you to do work at a professional level. So you have to be competing with, your work has to compete with those that are professionals. So you have to, whenever you're taking a course or a class, you can't think of your peers as your competition for a grade. That doesn't really matter as long as you pass the class. But even passing the class isn't as important as learning the information, because people don't care if you got a D or an A if your work looks like an A, right? But you have to be able to actually create the assets that you're desiring to. And I'm sure there are people out there who are like, oh, well, AI is going to help me with this or that. Well, we have yet to see AI come to the point where you can get such specificity from it that you can only get so far from an artist. And I don't know that there are any apps out there right now that still will model something for you with clean topology and give you incredible details like scale of subdivision like you can in ZBrush. So just some food for thought there when it comes to people thinking that they can circumvent actually learning with laziness and using some sort of AI app to help. That won't I'll tell you right now that's not happening so far. And there might be a day sooner than later that there may be a way for people to dictate specificity and details visual to a 3D model, but we aren't there now. And until you can actually just tell an AI, oh yes, keep that, but then add this or edit this, and I know that there's ways to do that with prompts when it comes to 2D imagery and something like Midjourney. But like I said, I don't think that 3D is going to be going anywhere away from human hands when it comes to specific types of characters or models anytime soon. As far as AI, like possibly helping people generate quick base meshes, like a base mesh, a basic form of something to work on. Yeah, I think that's probably going to be pretty soon. That's going to be around the corner for the public to use if it's not here already. But when it comes to detailed characters, I don't see it happening just yet. All right, I'm going to stop doing the whole fade through thing for now and go back to just eyeballing it for now, and then I'll get back to matching proportions later. I feel like that's kind of messing me up a little bit. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Once I chucked all the 3D programs out off my head. FX Node, yeah, if you want to post a link, I think you can. I don't know why you can't. A link to what? I don't know, but as long as there's nothing inappropriate, I don't see why I can't share a link. Okay, so I think I got some of these things wrong because of the angle that I was at. Just going to do some of this eyeballing it. At least I got the distance, I think, of things right. That helps. Oh, cool. The oral history of the, aha, nice. Of the dinosaur input device. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Sweet. Perfect. Yeah, thanks, man. That's a great highlight. That's awesome. It's a great post. Yeah, guys, check out FX Node's post there. It's a great breakdown of the DID. And Phil had a bunch of those on display too at his studio, and they were so cool to see in person. It's cool because for those of us who are nerds, like we grew up knowing about these things and seeing behind the scenes footage or like, pictures of it in the making of Jurassic Park book, but how many of us get to have the opportunity to actually see them face to face or like in physical form? So it was definitely getting a personal tour of his studio with him and his assistants was really fun. Yeah, now, I feel when it's interesting when you find people that are your heroes and they are genuinely like decent, kind people who are happy to talk with you and show you around and be normal human beings with each other. Like it's really wonderful. But yeah, it's something that I'm so grateful for in general, just because the cliche is never meet your heroes because the inference is that they'll disappoint you. But not the case with Phil. He definitely came off like a very just a kind human being who has been very hardworking and lucky to be in the positions he's been in. And yeah, it was just a very generous spirit. He's definitely, as many people will acknowledge, he's kind of grizzled and somewhat rightfully so, I think, because the industry is pretty rough, and there are a lot of companies that aren't always the most fair, or there's definitely hardships in any artistic endeavor. Period. But I think he had some pretty rough roads here and there. So that can either make someone more compassionate or it can make someone much more bitter and cold. And I think he probably just has a mixture of that, and rightfully so. Also, check out if you have a stomach for it, because it is kind of graphic and a bit gruesome. But there's a short that, or I should say, a film that he made in pieces over many years, along with a lot of his employees and people who just love his work, who worked at the Tippett Studios. And it's called Mad God, and it's really kind of a tour de force of collaging different techniques. So you have stop motion, you have CGI, you have I think even some rotoscope drawings, and like a whole mixture of and like real footage displayed on CRTs. like a whole just every kind of medium of art mashed together to make like this crazy cinematic journey. Um, yeah, and it's wild. It's definitely like a nightmare. It's like a really a crazy wild nightmare. Um, feels like I've never been on an acid trip, but I feel like they would probably have something similar to that. It's definitely like holy crap. Like it's pretty wild. So if you can handle some gore and some nasty stuff that I don't even want to say on here because I don't think YouTube would like it, check it out. But just make sure you know you're watching something that's basically a horror, like a very graphic horror movie at times. Um, yeah, but anyway, it's interesting stuff. But yeah, man, his if you ever get the chance, if you ever are in the Berkeley area and you know anybody if you know anyone who knows anybody at Tippett Studios, I would say see if you can get a little tour at all because it's amazing all the stuff he had in there. I don't know how much has changed. It's been years since I've been there, but when I was there, it's like a museum mixed with a studio because there's so many iconic props and maquettes and statues and or like faux animatronics that were for films that never got made. I don't know if you can look it up. I think there might be because I posted on my Instagram about it. I asked if I could take pictures. There was this one movie that was going to be made and then it didn't, and it was called Red Dog, and it was about this robot dog and a boy who were stranded on Mars. And this robot dog was designed by the same gentleman who designed Ed 209. And and along with many others, mistakenly assumed that it was, without really paying attention when we were younger, assumed it was Phil because he worked with Phil, but it was Craig Haynes. Craig Haynes designed Ed 209 for RoboCop, which is one of my favorite robot designs of many. And he also designed this dog that was a beautiful aluminum and solar cell covered and red and like copper wiring covered like puppet, and it was like it's an or maquette anyway, and it was like probably half scale I think, or maybe full size, I forget, but it was big, but it wasn't as big as like a real dog. I mean, some dogs are that small. It's probably like the size of a corgi with like longer legs, so it was like a medium sized dog, like a real like medium sized dog. But I don't know if that was a full size maquette or if they were going to go for like a yellow lab size. But anyway, incredible robot, like fake robot, but like it looked real. Like it looked like it was real materials, like real solar cells and real aluminum and steel and like copper wiring, beautiful like ribbon coat, like when you have wires that are like wrapped in like woven material. But they had like copper weaving around the certain things, cables. It was gorgeous, just a real work of art. Just eye candy, and the eyes were very soulful. Like they were little cameras, I believe. Maybe they were like fake eyes, but obviously behind them were cameras. So it was a really like well thought out, like practical design for an amazing robot that would have made the movie a cult sensation just because I was going to say sensation because of just the design of it is so brilliant, so beautiful. And I was shocked that it didn't get made on that alone. I would think if you have a decent script and you have that robot in the movie, like it's a guaranteed like early 90s 80s classic, I thought. But unfortunately somehow it never got made. But he has a statue, or he did have a statue in his studio, and it was just mind blowing. So anyone who likes biomechanical design, like definitely look it up. It's awesome. Excuse me as I take a drink. Yeah, exactly. Right now, yeah, I agree with Higazi there. Yeah, AI is a bit overhyped when it comes to certain things. Like I think there are people with money who are very excited about it, but those of us who actually do the work realize that it's not there yet for a lot of things. I think behind closed doors, they're doing some amazing experiments, but as far as what's available for consumers or even anyone to really purchase and use at a commercial level, yeah, it's not there. Um, Only one of the three big softwares. Learned others, yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I have to watch that documentary, Mad Dreams of Monsters. Or maybe I haven't. I forgot. Maybe because it's all the same information that I learned from him firsthand. But yeah, any documentary you can find about Phil, watch it. He's had a wild ride. I got to say, the guy has had some incredible achievements in his life, and yeah, you can learn a lot from people with that kind of experience. And what you also learn is that these people are just people, and they are human beings who have lives and children and responsibilities and challenges and bills, and they're people who are hardworking and very passionate and didn't give up, persevered through hard times, and we're also, like I tell a lot of students at my 3 points whenever kids ask, like, how do I get in the industry? Well, you have to be basic. Number one, you have to be exceptional at what you do, no matter what, because you're working against, you're trying to get jobs from people who are excellent at what they do to begin with. So you have to be great at what you do. That's like the barrier to entry, right? The minimum is you have to be great at what you're doing, whatever you want to do. Number two, then, is you have to be good with people. You have to be able to have a conversation with somebody and be pleasant and have some sort of likability, right? You have to be someone who's pleasant to be around and engage with, like a normal, sane, kind person. And then lastly, you have to be lucky. But I don't really believe in luck. When I say lucky, it's the cliches that go with it. Luck favors the prepared, right? That's a famous one. So if you're prepared, what is luck really? But it's when skill, is it skill and opportunity or something and opportunity? Preparation and opportunity. There you go. Meet. And that's where you'll find the odds of getting in the industry, getting your foot in the door somewhere. It comes down to those factors, I think. So that's my 3 little points. But yeah, you'll find those are hard work alone will get you very far. But understanding how to relate to people and being authentic is huge, because people can smell BS a mile away. And as I've been hearing more and more lately, which is weird, because it's always been the case, but it's like people crave authenticity more than ever. And I think it's probably because there's just a lot of superficial, fake people out there especially on social media. A lot of you know, there's a lot of personalities that are not actually genuine, but just out there to get the likes, the clicks, whatever, to make money that way. And I guess that's a way to make a living. But I struggle with social media, if I'm being honest. Like I don't like posting a lot in general, and I don't really post a lot about myself. Partly because it's like I don't feel like it's anyone's business to know all about my life. But then, as an artist, you have to share your work, and even that, it's like sometimes if I'm working for a film or a studio or any kind of different project that requires an NDA, I can't share any of this stuff until it's already publicly out there. So that makes it kind of hard to share what I'm working on when it's like consuming my days, and and then I'm barely having the energy to work on my own stuff because I've spent the last 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours working on helping someone else's film or dream become reality. So it's a struggle that I think a lot of younger people don't understand when they first want to go into CG for film, is or for anything really, is that it's hard work, and then you're not going to be able to do a lot of the stuff that you want to do necessarily. You're helping create a product for someone else, so you have to go in kind of knowing that too, so as to not waste your time, and or money. Um, but it's if you can find pleasure in creating detailed work for others, or if you're lucky enough to become a part of a brand or a studio that creates work that you love to begin with, then that's the dream, kind of, in a sense, right? Then you're almost not working. Then you're just sort of getting paid to play. But yeah, no artist wants to be a marketer. Yeah, it's true. I sure don't. I don't. Yeah, I don't like even just talking about myself that much. Really, people ask, I'm happy to dialogue, but I'm not. Um, I don't think I'm a narcissist. Like I don't enjoy focusing on me, talking to others about that. I don't. It just doesn't do it for me. So I tend to stay away from it. So it's all these. I keep finding images that I want to save, and then it's like you can't open this with a regular image viewer. But here's one of the other images I'm looking at. Trying to get some more detail on the snout right now. Mohammed, you have a question? Go for it. FX Node, yeah, but it pays the bills. You're right. For better or for worse. And yeah, the struggle, you know, when you look at the word passion, when you really look at the meaning of the word passion, it means suffering. So it's not a joke when it comes to being a passionate creative. It's not all roses and cherries, that's for sure. Sadly, not to be a rain cloud on your parade, but life has pain, has struggle. It's reality for everybody. Everybody suffers in some way or another at times. One guarantee, we all have challenges in life. I'm just using the clay build-up brush here because it's great for just sort of slapping in some volume and filling in areas that need it quickly. How do you get work if you're from a third world country as a character artist? That is a good question. I can't say because I was born in America, so I can't say from firsthand. But what I would guess would be an easy way to start that would be low cost for you and potentially give you higher dividends. Is to start putting your work, create some good work first of all. So have a decent portfolio. It doesn't have to be a ton of imagery, but just enough that you can put up on something like Fiverr. And I'm sure you probably heard that before, but that would be my guess. Is something like Fiverr, where you, and I'm mentioning Fiverr because it's probably the most popular like freelance site right now out there, where you can, you know, you're competing against other people who are offering similar services. But again, if you have great work to show, or it's just unique and good, and it's of a niche that not many people are involved with, even better. But I would say go somewhere like there and start looking to market yourself as a character artist. But that's a challenge too, because I don't know how many professional companies that look for character artists are looking there to begin with. But again, if you can find work that would be low cost, you know, that you could offer people that would help you build up, you know, characters or portfolio pieces, or even characters that you could build upon further. Like someone only needs a basic character and you give them that, but then you use that as base mesh to go further with it in a totally different direction, so you're not infringing on their stuff. That could be a way to do it too. But yeah, you gotta, you know, it's an interesting challenge. I understand, because yeah, it's not like there's a, even for those of us who are in America, like when I was learning ZBrush, there was not at the time. And we're talking back like 2005 to 2008. I think I got serious about it around. I was messing on and off with it back through then, and I got serious in like 2010, 2011. And it was like 2012, I think I started working with ZBrush workshops, around there, something like that. Even back then, I had to learn what I learned from the internet on my own, like kind of, you know, seeking out the information and putting it together and taking a course or two online that was only available online. Because the universities around me, even the art schools, they didn't really have experts in ZBrush at the time because it was still so new and still becoming like this standard. There was a lot of competition between that and Mudbox, which is kind of funny now because I don't know anybody who uses Mudbox, but I know a lot of people who use ZBrush all the time. And I mean, I have heard of people still using Mudbox, but it's just such a, it's almost, there's nobody, I don't know anyone who's, like, I'll see occasionally on studio applications, they'll say ZBrush or Mudbox if you have experience with either. But very rarely. It's most of the time it'll be like Maya, Photoshop, Substance, ZBrush, you know. So, but yeah, there was very little education even that was formally being given at the time when I was learning ZBrush. So you've got to, you know, there's all that to say that there's not like, there wasn't, and there still isn't a lot of like very clear cut roads for people to learn from. I mean, there'll always be schools that want to take your money and tell you and promise you the world and say, oh, we guarantee placement or a job placement. It can't be any guarantees now more than ever. It comes down to how good your work is and how good you are with people, like I said, and marketing yourself is huge for sure. Because there are definitely people who have mediocre skill who are making money and from social media too. But also just getting their work out there, and it may not be that good, but they're just the squeaky wheel, right? The cliche, the phrase is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So, you know, you did the math, unfortunately. But yeah, that's something that comes with being somebody who's really glad to talk about themselves all the time and get your work out there. You know, it's a balancing act, you know, because I think there's a danger to becoming an egomaniac too. You know, you don't want to be that because nobody really likes an egomaniac. Maybe sycophantic people, you know, fans of them, people who are like, oh, you're so great. but normal people don't don't take a liking to egomaniacs very much. People don't like arrogant, self-absorbed people. In reality, it's not a very endearing trait. So just kind of blocking in forms. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot and trying to pick up the pace here a little bit because I know it can be kind of boring just to watch a very slow methodology. But I'm also looking at this reference imagery, and it's like there's a lot of more detail to this face than I originally thought. Which is great, but it just also means that detail means time. It's interesting. Looks like the snout. You put the nose, the holes for the nostrils further forward. Actually, kind of a bummer because that means I got to stretch this a little bit. Interesting. It was kind of a very cool, interesting look because you could certain skulls have a more of like that ovoid kind of shape for the nasal passage in general, and or like circular sometimes too, of course. But this one he has like kind of it has a nice little swoop to it. See what I'm talking about here? Like right here has this sort of eardrops kind of look, but then it kind of curls up and in, centered kind of a little bit different. Um, Traditional sculpting practice and exposure helped me too. Yep, yeah, for sure. Just reading the comments of the chat. Yeah. Happy to help, Mohammed. Yeah, I hope, and all these other people are giving you good advice too. So take everything and do what you will with it. Figure out what works best for you. Um, do I happen to know if the current demand for 3D dinosaur modeling is good? I like to venture into starting to make these friends. Cool. Yeah. Is there a demand? I mean, I think that dinosaurs are always going to be a popular animal. I think that they're always I think they're always beloved. So is there a demand? Yeah. I think there's always a market for them. A demand? Yeah, I guess there's a demand for them. I guess you could say that. Sure. Um, I think that well done dinosaurs are there's always going to be an appreciation for them. And even I will still, when I have some extra cash and it's like, looking at something that's well done, I'll pick it up. I like having beautiful sculptures and models or even well-made toys around me. It gives me inspiration and it's just pleasant to look at. So yeah, I would say there's always people who will purchase good work in general. But then also, yeah, like we were saying, like we're all been talking about right now, it's like there's also got to be a need and yeah, I should not need. There should always be a way to market yourself, right? So there's a need to market yourself. So there's the other thing is like you have people aware of what you're offering. That's kind of important too. Is to you can have the best work in the world, but if people aren't aware of it, they're never going to buy it. They're never going to find out about you. So always keep in mind how to advertise, or if you can hire someone to help you with that. If you have the means, that's a good option too. I mean, it would be money well spent if they have a track record of helping people sell whatever you're offering, be it dinosaur or anything else. Um, yeah, or maybe again, you maybe use AI to leverage that for you. Which I think I've been kind of looking at a little bit into too. I've been thinking about it. Is how can AI help someone market their work or sell products that they want to make or that they are making and do it more efficiently? Apparently people are saying, even though I haven't really experimented it much myself, AI can really help with SEO. I always see advertisements and people, gurus and other people saying like, "Oh, search engine optimization's dead. Ah, it's just over." Ah, but they don't tell you why because they want you to buy their course or something, or they don't just lay it out like, well, why? How is it dead? Why is how is AI helping? How do you implement AI to help your site garner more attention and get more clicks? But of course, they hide that behind a paywall, and then it just feels kind of scammy because it's like, oh, they're actually what they're really selling is their courses. They're not really. Are they really making money from what they're telling you they're selling, or are they actually just making money from selling the course? Like that's the question. When it comes to gurus and financial advisors and that kind of stuff. Sometimes it feels like, yeah, most of the time what they're making money off of is people buying their courses more so than the thing that they say that they're experts at. The sad thing with digital work and offering like digital courses to teach anything now is that piracy is so huge, and artists are notoriously poor and tech savvy. That's kind of the perfect bad mixture for them to go and pirate things, which obviously is never a good idea because more than ever they're hiding viruses and pirated files now. I've heard, but it's such a shame that those of us who like I made a course for Gnomon years ago, and within 2 weeks of me finishing it and then putting it up online, it got pirated and was up all over the internet and all the places it shouldn't be. And yeah, it was really frustrating because that was hurting my bottom line when it came from that, because I was expecting to make more residual from it, and now I get nothing because I think no one's watching it off of Gnomon's site because everyone who wanted to watch it has pirated it. So definitely doesn't incentivize me to want to make any more courses either, because unless I can do shorter form material maybe and then offer it that way, where I'm just constantly making some new stuff. But again, then I'm just like a course creator, like a video creator. It's like that's not what I want to do with my time. But again, it could be a way to make some extra cash. I don't know. We live in a very like transitional time, I think, as well. So it's challenging to figure out what the best steps forward are for the way things are changing with the AI and with arts, and even now with the industry, with the movie industry. Everyone's on hiatus right now. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are some people working, but my closest friends who work in the industry, they're not working on anything right now when it comes to movies. Still working on toy things and some other projects here and there, but when it comes to actual films, I don't know anybody because of the strike, the writer's strike. So a lot of people are just unemployed. So it's forcing people to look outside the box a little bit, think outside the box, and look for other options to make a living. So, new discoveries to sell in STL. Huh? What's the way you use to merge your subtools? Um, what's the way I use to merge my subtools? God sends perfect auto retopology tool. I know. I agree. I would love something. That's what I want AI to be used for right now is auto retopology, and then right after that, based upon your dictation of where you want the UV seams to be, auto UV, like optimization of that. Make it quick. Like that would be the dream for I think a lot of us artists because those tasks are so laborious and they just take forever. And they're just a paint. They're just a very like surgical process. They're detailed and they're time consuming and they're logical. Like there's sometimes puzzle solving to figure out certain things, but that's again where AI would come in and crush it. It would take us maybe hours to figure out or to work through. We could do in like half a second or a couple of seconds. That would be the dream. That's what I would love AI to assist with now more than ever is AI driven retopology with clear direction given by the human and AI driven UV. That would be a dream. And then what also AI rigging while we're at it. Like give us all help us automate the stuff that just takes forever so that we can just get to the artistry of it, right? To the animation, to the texturing, to the to all the other things that we actually as humans are best at. Yeah, that's my goal. That's my plea. AI, if you're listening, please do these things for humanity. AI into Unreal. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I've been working more and more in Unreal, and I'm going to be more and more in the coming months and years, for sure. And yeah, I agree with wholeheartedly. I would love AI to help Unreal a lot. Yeah, AI rigging and binding. Yep, AI weight painting. Ah, that'd be lovely. I mean, especially when you're doing something that's so standard, like a quadruped, right? A dog, a cat, a bird, cat, dog like creature, like Trico, for instance, right? A bird, cat, dog mixed together, like make it work. Humans, of course, like we are the most common 3D modeled organic, I would think. So that should be like such an easy thing for AI to figure out and understand. Oh, compression happens here. Flexion and extension happens this way. Certain areas are more rigid. Like just it's something that has been done so many times by so many different riggers, and I would think you could just give it a few really well rigged models to learn from, and it would have a sort of standardized model to use. Then that from there, if you had to have some sort of exceptions made, you could tell it, and it would understand how to make those exceptions, or how to bind other objects to it and give them the same weight and rigging and all of that. So yeah, it just feels like to me, it seems like it's a no brainer, and the only reason why it's not happening is probably because there's not a lot of money in it, unfortunately. But again, if it was something that they could have an AI even help them build, so that would cost minimal time and effort for whoever can program it, then just charge any artist like it's a plugin and it's like $5 or $10 or even $20. Like hell, I'd be happy to pay that for that kind of service. Um, but of course, the powers that be who would develop it would probably say it's a subscription model. You can't own it. Sorry, it's just the negative in me. Like that's what I'd expect. And of course, some hackers would figure it out, and then you'd have this constant countermeasure reaction thing. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, to have AI assist with the very taxing, laborious things would be wonderful. One can dream. But a part of me is like jealous of the future kids who are going to be doing 3D and are, when auto rigging and auto topology and all that comes out, it almost makes me feel like because they'll be envious that they wouldn't have to go through the pain that a lot of us have gone through for years of having to learn all that manually and do it by hand and just the hell that it is. Um, they should be forced. All younger people should be forced to prove that they can do it at least like 4 or 5 times before it unlocks for them. Because there's going to be people who just have never UV'd anything in their life, but they'll be they'll be drawn into the field right when auto everything is available, and so then they won't actually have any skills in those areas. It'll just be a one-click, fix for them, which is so painful to think about. It would be so rewarding for those of us who've endured that kind of pain for decades. Normally, I know people wonder why I'm going to appear a lot. Probably it's because normally you could just right click with your stylus and bring that menu up. But since you can hit spacebar to do it, I found sometimes I'll accidentally uh, tap, like right now I'm using the right click on my stylus just to rotate things, but I don't want to just tap it and have that pop up like that. So I just turned that off, which you can do in your preferences somewhere in here. I did it a long time ago and I forget where it is. But just in case anyone's wondering, that's why when I'm using this, you never seen this menu pop up. Do that if I want to. Which I should probably get in the habit of doing instead of doing this up and down, but whatever. It's just muscle memory at this point. Like I'm like right there, just automatically I'm going up there instead of doing this, which I guess in the grand scheme of things could save me more time if I add up all those like quarter seconds that I'm going back and forth, but whatever. It's just me being a dumb human. Versus what our AI overlords might think. This is actually lower. It does have this ridge here, but it kind of makes it look happy here. It looks like he's almost like like smiling. But yeah, there's this ridge. It always made it look kind of tender, though. When you see it, it kind of gives you a very sympathetic kind of look. The eye right in here. Yeah, it really does look like he's happy though. Like, is this a regular sphere or is this a poly? That's a regular sphere. Polysphere. Just gonna add in the eyes now. Might as well. A recent CG movie that I watched that was a lot of fun, but not related to this directly by any means. But was the I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I love Resident Evil, and they just released the very cheesily named Resident Evil Death Island, and it's fantastic. I gotta say, it's CG. It's made by the guys at Capcom and other artists, so just know it's nothing like all the, in my opinion, horrifically bad Resident Evil movies, which is all of them, in my opinion. The first one is just the first and second are just okay, but they're still like pretty like grating to me. I think they're pretty terrible. And the reason why I'll just kind of give a little bit of defense for that is not that I enjoyed any of them, but as that I heard that Paul W.S. Anderson, who is the director and the husband of Mila Jovovich, who stars in them, they were not allowed by Capcom. They were dictated actually to not be able to one-to-one copy the stories from the games, which I don't know why exactly, but it's kind of a bummer because that's what as as a huge Resident Evil fan, that's what I want to see. And as somebody who's moving toward making my own films, if I ever had the opportunity to make a Resident Evil film, or if I could go after it, I'd only want to if I could actually make the stories faithful to the games, to the original, like and the way the remakes look, basically. I love those games, the major number ones, and the remakes are incredible. Like the remakes, in my opinion, are just amazing. They just do such a great job. The artistry, the visuals, the voice acting, the mocap, just everything. The artistry, all of it together is just absolutely god level, just god tier, beautiful, well done. Are they perfect? No, of course they could be little things made here and there, but I mean overall, like there's a lot of people saying like for Resident Evil 4, this is how you make a remake, and it was like hell yeah, like the remake of RE4 is amazing. And apparently there's rumors that they're gonna announce for those of you who played the original Resident Evil 4 like I did back in the day, they're gonna probably announce Ada Wong's DLC called Separate Ways. They're probably gonna have that come in soon. I think the Tokyo Game Show, they're expecting an announcement for that. So that'd be great. But anyway, Death Island's really fun. So if you like a good, I mean, it's good is a relative term, but I mean, they are far more. They do acknowledge all the things that happen in the game. So all the CG movies and even like the CGI, excuse me, there's a Claire and Leon Netflix show that's called Resident Evil something. All the CGI Resident Evils are great in my opinion. They're still cheesy, of course, but they're at the same level. They're a bit more cheesy than the remakes. I would say the remakes they kind of took what was cheesy in the originals, which were still charming to some degree, and they made it way more serious and mature. So they just hold up almost like really good, well-made films, for what they are. Again, with the ridiculousness, but the CG movies are still a bit more ridiculous than the games. They go a little bit more bombastic and all out with their action and the storyline. It's a bit more just ridiculous, but they still just work so much better than the live-action films. So anyway, for those of you curious and you want to see some decent 3D modeling and mocap, if you like Resident Evil, check out the new movie Death Island. This is not sponsored by them. I'm just saying. It's a good time. Do we have any Resident Evil fans in the audience? Post estimation into FBX Studio. When AI cures cancer, then I'll become afraid of our industry. Yeah, for industry, right? Be the dinosaur or just animate. Maybe a mix of the two. Uh, they can make Resident Evil and Mortal Kombat live action movie correct. World would be a better place. Yeah, right. Agreed. Yeah, the same thing with Mortal Kombat movies. I'm like, the last one that came out was better than the previous ones, I guess. But I never really watched the originals either, though. But I knew that they all just looked super cheesy and like bad. Um, it's kind of sad that there isn't a more direct pipeline for game industries companies to make films good adaptations of their properties. Because so far, what is the only? There's only one, I think, one or two good ones that of all the game adaptations that have ever been made. Mario is probably the best game adaptation movie we've ever seen. All the Tomb Raiders are bad in my opinion. I mean, it's like they're passable, but they're just so cringy and they're just not. They don't have the charm or anything that the original games had. Same thing with Resident Evil, but the CGI Resident Evil is kind of make up for it in the sense that they are. But it's almost like a cheat code in a way because they're the people who made the game. You know, it's a lot of the same people are involved tightly with the CG films. You know, but with the exception of Tokyo, I don't think anywhere else had a really theatrical release for like Death Island or any of the other CGI movies, unfortunately. Because I would have happily paid a ticket to go see it in theaters. It's definitely fun. Like the action's over the top and ridiculous, and there's a shot where one of the characters falls off of a motorcycle, and the physics and the it's just because I worked in an ER for a couple of years, I know how bad motorcycle accidents can be, sadly, and yeah, there's no way in hell that any human being would have survived, or at least they would have survived, perhaps, but they would have dozens of broken bones, probably run over by a car, and like be bloodied and battered everywhere. And this character's fine; it's just rolled right off, moving at like 100 miles an hour, get flung off, no problem. It's just like, dude, they'd be dead, or like they'd be in the hospital for months after that, for like a year. Ridiculous. But again, it's whatever. It's a show. It's a movie. Cheers. But yeah. Yeah, Sonic. Yeah, you're right. The first, I mean, this is the other thing, though. I think that even from, in my opinion, I know the Sonic movies have done well, and I've seen them in theaters, and they're fun. But again, I mean, it's like I can't hate on them too much because they're not horrific. But what's sad to me is that they didn't. Sega just does not seem to learn. I don't know why. Sega fails in many areas. They had great starts for a lot of things, and then they dropped the ball. Like with all the Sonic games, to me the most successful after like Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, especially the first one. Actually, I know people like the second one a lot, but I think the first one's actually a better, well-made game in a lot of ways. Just graphics aren't as high res, but uh, regardless, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are great. But then after that, all the 3D games just haven't captured that. What we just, I think, as a Sonic fan myself as a kid, I just wanted what Nintendo did with Mario. Just make more of the same, just different and polished more. That's all. Like Sonic 2D, running. That's all. Collecting rings, defeating Dr. Robotnik. That's all. That's all you guys got to do. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but they did constantly. And it's like it never was that good to me. In my opinion, it was never as enjoyable as the originals. And I don't know why. I don't know why that they just didn't see what Nintendo was doing right and say, hey, we should just our fans want the same thing. Just make more 2D Sonic the way Sonic Mania was. Sonic Mania was amazing. I'm friends with the composer of it, and we would just chat and dialogue about how much we loved that. And he also worked on Streets of Rage, and I think they did a good job for Streets of Rage 4. It's definitely fun. I did a whole live stream with a buddy of mine on YouTube years ago during the pandemic, and we did the last three, so 4, 3, and 2. We skipped 1 because 1 is kind of basic, and it's just not basic in its design. It's just they didn't really fully flesh out the controls and the moves like they did in 2 and 3. But again, like that's something else that I think is just it's a great brand that I'm glad they actually haven't done a ton of sequels to Streets of Rage that have been bad. But yeah, Sonic, until they did Sonic Mania, I feel like there wasn't a lot of there weren't a lot of great Sonic games really since Sonic Adventure 2. But again, that's just my personal taste. I'm sure there are people who beg to differ. Another game series that's been great that we don't get a lot of, unfortunately, but we have a new one. But I don't play it as much as I want to go back and play the original. Is Soul Calibur. Anyone else play Soul Calibur back in the day? And Soul Calibur and the Dreamcast, that was it, man. That was the stuff. Great. And I don't know why Sega hasn't done a arcade release yet. The Model 3 games, so like Daytona, my favorites was in the rest of the world known as Scud Racer, but in the US it was known as Sega Super GT. Awesome video game, awesome arcade game. Just pure racing, really hard, really fast, fun, ridiculous music, gorgeous visuals, and they still look good today, which is crazy. I've figured out a way to run it on an emulator on my Steam Deck, and then they updated the Steam Deck software, and now it doesn't work. So I have to figure out how to recompile it all. But that's the only way to experience these games now. You can only emulate those arcade Model 3 games, and there's like Virtual Cop, I think, and some other things like Walking Dead. I mean, House of the Dead, the original arcade stuff. You can only do those through emulation because there is no way to legally buy them anywhere. And I won't obviously say where to find anything online, but you can. But you can't purchase them anywhere. Sega hasn't made a collection for people to enjoy, so you either have to go to the arcade physically and find an old cabinet from 1997 or 98 or whenever they first released it, to or find figure out how to emulate them. That's it. Like there's no other way to experience those games, sadly. And there's such great artwork, like the work that went into that, the design. For me, I love the Chrome Viper. Like they had a Dodge Viper RT or GTS fully chrome, and then they had two blue racing stripes down the middle. It's gorgeous. I just thought this so. I would love to see a car like that in reality. So I actually sort of did the inversion of that with my car. I got a Model 3 recently, like a few years ago, and I started to put some chrome on it as some fun. But yeah, you just don't see that. Like the design choices that they made in that game, you just don't see that much. So it's kind of a bummer. Yeah, that we just don't get a lot of design like that in new games. So you just don't see a lot of that cool stuff anymore. I don't know. And the arcades are kind of, I don't know. I guess they're still making new arcade games. I mean, they haven't really been into like a Dave and Buster's or any arcade really in a while. But I mean, arcades still like alive. Like people still go to arcades anymore. I don't know. I just remember as a kid, I really enjoyed it, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's just it was a different way to experience things. Just kind of like going to the movie theater, I guess, in some ways. Like there was a reason to go to the arcades back in the day because while we had game consoles at home, what was possible in the arcade visually was still better than anything we had at home at the time. But now it feels like we've kind of caught up or surpassed it, really, and so that the level of artistry and detail and things that we have in games now at home just blow away anything we see in the arcades at all. It's kind of a bummer. It's like it'd be cool to be able. It'd be exciting to go to the arcade and know that you're going to only experience something there in person. You can only experience in person. That you would not be able to have at home, or at least that like a movie that you wouldn't be able to have at home for maybe a year or two or something. You know what I mean? As they would port it over to home consoles. Like that's a whole business model right there. I think that you could actually, as a game company, you could make money off of. Is yeah, of course you could make the game to sell at home, and I'm sure you'd make more money that way. I guess in the end, that's the draw too. Is that you're selling millions of copies of a game digitally directly to the consumer. So why would you spend money on cabinets and distributing them to a limited number of physical locations? Like I get it when I start thinking about the business aspect of it. It's not very lucrative, I guess, by comparison to how much you can make digitally selling games to people through a PlayStation store or Microsoft store, etc., Nintendo. But man, I still miss that. I miss that experience, the physical experience of going to the arcade and being excited to see something new and just visually striking, just different, beyond what's experienced at home. But still, just as the same thing is for movies, somehow the movie industry has barely now, I guess it's kind of on its knees, but it survived for so long by still offering us the only place to see them is in a theater, right? The only place to see movies that we wanted to see theatrically until they eventually released for digital and home. Yeah, I don't know. It makes me miss some of that. I'm old, I guess now. I'm talking like an old man. Back in my day, We used to have these arcades. 40 for anyone wondering. So weird to say that. I never, as a kid, you never think, what's it going to be like when I'm 40? That's so old. Not that old. The one on Dreamcast was the best Sonic. I agree. I think Sonic Adventure was amazing. I love that game. So much fun. Yes, I agree with you, Judah Knight. I hope they remake Resident Evil Code Veronica as well. That game, I think it's rumored that that is what they're gonna remake next because I signed up for their newsletter or whatever, and they sent out a survey after Resident Evil 4 came out, and they had all the games listed, all the Resident Evil games that they could remake next, and they took a survey saying like, which one do you want to see next? Resident Evil 5, Code Veronica, Resident Evil 9. And honestly, I would say after 6, I haven't really enjoyed the new Resident Evils. I only enjoyed 7 because they had Chris Redfield at the end. Spoiler alert, you play as him at the end, and the music is great. But the Winters, Ethan Winters and his daughter, these are characters that are just very shallowly written because you were playing in a first person, so I think they didn't want to give him too much personality. I don't know. Seems like a cheap excuse to just not write a good character, in my opinion. The villains were kind of interesting, but still not that fleshed out either. So it just felt like very kind of arcadey. It felt like an arcade game in some senses, and the superficiality of the story was very, very thin. I should say the depth of the story is very thin, very shallow, compared to the ramp up to 6. And I know people have their like 6, 5, and 6 have their detractors because of how balls out, just crazy action they get. But again, if you want a story to crescendo in the defense of 5, because I enjoyed 5 a lot. Is you need to have a point where a villain is defeated, and the only way to get there is usually through some sort of action, right? Through some sort of massive adventure. So 5 kind of going really action hard after 4, to me makes a lot of sense, and placing it, in a very like abrasive, rough environment, like Central Africa, sort of like in Kenya, I guess is where they placed it, where there's like a lot of civil unrest. That makes a lot of sense. That's a very dramatic backdrop for a story, in my opinion. So when they have to go up against Wesker and all that, it's just, it is an epic kind of problem. Again, it's ridiculous too, but it's like what he did with Jill and everything else. But still, whatever. It was still fun, I thought. And it didn't feel you can only have a slow plotting, monster in the house scenario for so long before it just becomes kind of repetitive. And I kind of am glad that they did their share of that with like 1 through 3. And even Code Veronica, I would say, which really should have been called Resident Evil 4. Because then even 4, it's still creepy. And now the remake, I think, is way creepier than the original Resident Evil 4. I think the remake of 4 really found that balance of action and horror mixed together. They did a pretty good job, I thought. So 5, I think they could, if they remake 5, the rumors that they're going to do, apparently what they're going to do is they are going to make 5 at some point, but they might be making Code Veronica first, which I hope they do, because I think that it needs a remake sooner than 5, because 5 is still so much more recent than Code Veronica, and it looks still so good compared to the older ones that Code Veronica should be the next one they remake. So I agree with you. And then after that, I would love to see 5. And I'm not very enthusiastic about 9 because unless they bring it back to, which it seems like they were going to, make Chris the main character again, and do some more, I don't know. I almost kind of want them to end the main storyline with all these main characters somehow, like bring it to a point where it concludes and you kind of tie it off with a bow, and then if you want to keep the brand going, just use a whole new set of characters, right? Like introduce a whole new set and carry on with them, or even continue with younger ones who we haven't had much of. Like in Resident Evil 6, you have Sherry, who's cool. I love that they brought her back, and Jake, you find out what his background is, and that's interesting. I'm trying not to spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it who might want to. But so again, I sort of took the meat off the bone, as it were, with 6, because I know there's a lot of people who don't like, in general, just how they went with it. But overall, I found it pretty entertaining. I think Leon's story is the most like the original Resident Evil's in a lot of ways, but it's still pretty wild and ridiculous. And Chris's is probably the least interesting to me, only because it felt very military shooter-like. It didn't really feel like it had as much dynamism as Jake's and Sherry's, because they're together. Or what was the other? The other character was Jake, Jerry, Chris, and Leon. Oh yeah. So it was Leon, Jake, and Chris. Yeah, so Jake and Sherry's story and Leon and I guess Helena, is that her name? Helena? Helena, whatever. Those two were pretty good. I thought Jake and Sherry's actually probably the most, it was one of the most ridiculous, but also the most fun and interesting because Jake has such an attitude. And I think it's Troy Baker who does the voice of Jake, if I'm not mistaken, who's known for, of course, many other games, but most beloved probably is The Last of Us, especially as Joel. Um, yeah, and I thought he did a great job as Jake. And Sherry was just cool because you're bringing this beloved character back as an adult now. She was a child when Leon and Claire saved her in Resident Evil 2, and you never really. I'm sure some people wondered like what happened to that character, would they ever bring her back or anything? And it's so cool they brought her back as an adult working for the counter terrorist group, and she's got some sort of secret abilities here and there, which are not. It's mostly just health regeneration, but it's like it was cool that they put it in a realistic context and how people would react to it, like Jake, and like it's kind of shocking. That was cool. Actually, it was very interesting storytelling. It was fun. So I like 6, I guess, overall, but 7, it's just because it's so different and it's just goes off the rails. I think it was a competent horror game, but it didn't really feel like a Resident Evil game. And that's my contention with it, I guess, is that I would have loved to have had just the main characters continued, or just wrap them up and then make some new ones and bring in like Sherry could be, since she's young and she hasn't been around a lot in the other games. She would be a logical character to keep going with, in my opinion. But anyway, so if anyone knows anybody at Capcom, tell them to make Resident Evil 9 with Chris and Sherry. That'd be cool. Anyway, sorry, I'm just going off of my own nerdy speculations. House of the Dead was way ahead of its time. Yeah, for sure. Dave and Buster's, yeah. With friends at the arcade, not social media. Yep. We're dinosaurs 42. Yeah, I agree. It's the truth, man. We are, pun intended. We are dinosaurs in the 40s, I guess. Back in my day, we used to socialize in the real world, not online. And I think there's a lot of healthy things to be said about that, honestly, in many, many, many respects. I think we need to have human beings reconnect with each other in real physical space. I think it's definitely to everyone's benefit to enjoy spending time with each other in person, doing something outside, not just sitting on the couch playing video games, even though I do really love playing a good video game now and then. And I'm kind of glad that as I get older, my taste has kind of stayed more and more concentrated. So I don't have a lot of time to play games. So when I do play one, I really make time just to, like I would like make time to watch a show or read a good book, which I use audiobooks for everything now, unfortunately. But I'll still physically buy a book if I really enjoy the audiobook, just to support the cause. And it's nice to have something physical and tangible. And especially if you ever get to meet the author, it's nice to have them actually sign it, which is pretty cool, just as a personal memento. But yeah, when it comes to games, I'm pretty particular. But I'm grateful that I'm not just like all embracing of a lot of different games that are time sinks, because I wouldn't have a life. I don't have the time. I'm kind of glad that I'm sort of happy with like being a fan of very select brands, and these brands I'm a fan of them because of the artistry that goes into them, and it's so much artistry, it takes years to make them. So then we don't have them happening all the time. Like a quick pickup game is like Call of Duty for me. I'll play a couple rounds with some friends. Most of the time, it's actually just to catch up with some old friends of mine, and then or just stay in touch with some and enjoy a couple rounds of team deathmatch or some raids or something, and then I get off. Otherwise, like during the pandemic, I played a lot of You Don't Know Jack and Jackbox games. Back when I was a kid, back in my day, we only had You Don't Know Jack. It was the original. That was the only game that Jackbox, that company, made. I think it was even called Jackbox at the time. It was in some other company. Maybe it was Jackbox. I don't know. It was hilarious, and we loved it. I'm a nerd like that. I loved like trivia, and especially like movie trivia, and I loved learning. So in general, like those trivia games like that, really, I've always really found fun. But during the pandemic, some of my friends who were actors, actually, they got us all together online. And so every week we would, like a book club, it would be like a game club. We'd all get together. We'd turn on our cameras, and then we'd have usually 2 screens, most of us. And someone had laptops. And we'd turn on the cameras, so we'd be on one side with Zoom, and the person hosting the game would share the screen. Then we'd all dial into the Jackbox game, and then we'd all play together, laughing and talking together in real time. And it was great. It actually helped keep my sanity, I think. And we would do a lot of drawful and so many inappropriate drawings that we would do in that time. Oh man, it was hilarious. Yeah, those were some good times. But yeah, games. I think for me, it's either let's bring on some really fantastic stories and amazing visuals and competent, decent gameplay. That's what I'm a fan of. Or make it quick, fun, fast pick up and play gameplay where like Mario Kart or a fighting game like Soul Calibur or Mortal Kombat, or like a quick shooter like Call of Duty. Otherwise, I want a story. Like I want a really good story, and I want a really solid beginning, middle, and end. I don't want it to carry on forever. You know, I think like I played through the campaign of Grand Theft Auto, and then now and then I play online with friends. Back in the day, I haven't been online in Grand Theft Auto in forever, and I never finished Red Dead Redemption. I think because it just felt so Red Dead Redemption 2. I love the first one because the second one just was so big, and I guess I just kind of got sidetracked, and then I just haven't finished it. But I'm kind of curious to finish it because I do appreciate the artistry that's gone into it and the depth of programming that they did for that game is impressive. Um, so anyway, so I'm just nerding out about games because I love a good game. I think to me, I love good storytelling. That's really what it comes down to. I appreciate good auteurs telling me a great story. That's why I love movies. That's why I work in the industry that I do. And I feel like they're very effective ways of communicating. Right? A story is something that's been forever, a way that human beings communicate ideas, concepts, values, morals, lessons. There's just, it's communication. It's really what it is. But it's communication through entertaining way. So I feel in that sense that I love a story that has a good moral, right? That you walk away not just like, oh, be good to people, and not like morals for children is great, but more so something that endears it to you that you walk like the Matrix. You walk out of the Matrix and you think, could we be in the Matrix? Like it brings your mind to that point. When you first saw it, as for me, when I was like 18, walked out of the theater being like, wow, that idea. First of all, the movie was amazing. The action, incredible. Music, everything was just like something we'd never seen before, and it was awesome. Then it makes you wonder, like the philosophical side of things, then and the theological questions. It's like, could we be in a simulation? Or is our reality just really like a simulation that our souls are being projected into our meat bags and this is a simulation, but it feels real because this body is, we're in this body? It just brought up all these amazing, like, philosophical questions and theological questions, ontological questions. And I just, I love that. I mean, I grew up in a very, like, Christian home, too. So, like, of course, theology and the bigger questions of life were often discussed at the dinner table and just in life, with my friends and family. So that was always something that brought up thinking, right? It brought up deep thinking and questions and dialogue. And so movies like The Matrix and others that make you think and question and talk about reality and the potential of what is and what is not and what could be. I love that. I just think it's great, and it brings up. You can still have it be on the surface entertaining, but then it brings these depth of questions that most entertainment doesn't. So in the same way, games I enjoy because good games for when they have a good story, because it makes you again think, question, talk, and feel. Like I really love Ghost of Tsushima. It's probably one of my most recent famous favorite games. Along with Forever will be The Last Guardian. Again, just because I'm a huge animal person, I love my dog. I love nature. I love animals a lot. So having that relationship with Trico, where I think anyone who doesn't have a soul won't cry, but anyone who does definitely cried in that game at least one or two times, if not more. It's such a beautiful relationship between the boy and his griffin, and how their culture views them as man eaters, and that's all they were known as. And then you realize that there's far more to that than what meets the eye, and they're not actually out to eat people. Really, I mean, they're under control of something else, and so I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but definitely play The Last Guardian if you have a PS4 or PS5. Amazing game. And I think if you have PlayStation Plus, it's free. So you can just download it for nothing and play it. But yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, man. Brilliant writing. And I just hope and pray that the next one is just as good. Because I'm pretty sure they're working on a number 2. And God bless him, Chad Stahelski, the director of John Wick. He was formerly Keanu Reeves' stunt double on The Matrix. He is directing then the film adaptation of Ghost of Tsushima, and I feel like that is possibly chocolate and peanut butter, the story and Chad Stahelski taking it over, because clearly they know how to make action look good. Because John Wicks are great in my opinion. I think I really love 3 actually more than 4. I enjoyed 4, but something was missing for me that I think that 3 had its peak. I thought that was like the apex of all of them. I love all 4. And I'm hoping that they can catch lightning in a bottle again with taking on Ghost of Tsushima, because that story is very powerful and very moving and mature, and it brings up again great questions about life and family, duty, devotion, honor, respect, generational elements of all of those. If you play a side quest, you have this amazing conversation, like several conversations, but this one, I'm getting chills to even talk about it. This amazing conversation with your nanny, who she raised you as a child, and now she's going through dementia, and she's becoming senile a little bit, and she's confessing things to you that you never knew about her relationship with your father, and your character's father has been passed on. He's died. You watched him die as a child. And so, as someone whose grandmother did go through dementia and Alzheimer's, then passed away recently, it affected me deeply. But also, it was such mature and sophisticated writing of what it really is like to have these generational relationships that matter, and to deal with people suffering that you love, and how to help them during that time, and how to love them. Awesome. And that's just so rare, I think. I mean, and even films and storytelling, period. But to do it in a game, and with such conviction and amazing facial capture and heart and maturity, it's like, this is, adults would appreciate it. Children, it would go over their heads. I mean, they probably still, get it, but it's not the same thing as having firsthand lost a loved one like that, or seen a loved one go through that. So it was amazing. And I just thought, man, like that's what makes games great, because you can experience these things, that you can have these long conversations that, if well written, you would never be able to have that in a movie, really, or it'd have to be like a major part of the movie, and then you'd never have that kind of length of conversation perhaps again in the movie. But in a game, you can just take as long as you want to go through the whole thing. And that's where, again, I was just blown away by the level of maturity that the writers put into Ghost. And it's, for me, like a lot of the movies I love, it's like the perfect storm. You have amazing visuals, great, phenomenal soundtrack, good direction, cinematography, framing, it's iconic in the cutscenes, and then the voice acting, or the acting period, performance capture, phenomenal, right? The artistry, the modeling, the textures, the lights, everything just 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, just out of the park, perfect, great. And then on top of it, just meaningful stories that people can relate to and talk about. And it's just, I mean, like, that's rare. It's really rare, I think. And it deserves to be praised, and I think it deserves to have sequels. I think we need to have more games like that too. Like that's universal values and concepts of love and loss and responsibility and honor and all that. It's like there's only positives I see coming out of all of that. To inspire cultures and generations of people to think about those values and those ideas that benefit any society. I think those are great. So anyway, sorry, I'm just on my soapbox, just loving on Ghost of Tsushima. But if you haven't played it, I highly recommend it. You should. And of course, the action is awesome. Like the sword play, and there's like sticky bombs and things you can. Oh man, like you're just like a badass ninja in Ghost of Tsushima. It's awesome. Yes, Shadow of the Colossus, another great. Yes, I love it too. I still love Last Guardian far more, in my opinion, because I love animals. So and Last Guardian does have this really bittersweet, happy ending, versus Shadow, which is just so dark and sad. But I do love dark content, like content that makes you sad or think. I do enjoy some of that for sure. We need to reconnect with people in real time. Yeah, right. It was a balance when we were kids. Judah Knight. Yeah, I agree. Like that's what it felt like for me. I remember growing up loving my Sega Genesis and Atari and a few other games before that, the Commodore and all that. But then I also loved going outside and climbing trees and playing tag and baseball and pickup games of basketball and riding my bike, getting scuffed up knees, being active. Yeah, getting out, enjoying nature, catching toads, and having tons of pets and amphibians and tanks and aquariums in our house, and really blending nature with life, as was my childhood. And I was lucky to grow up in a loving home, parents who were very supportive and also loved the animals very much. They fostered me being a science nerd, where I would love to ask questions of why and how. But they ensured that we would get out, that we wouldn't sit there and just vegetate in front of the TV all day, every day. And the internet hadn't been invented back then, much less anything beyond a computer that would be portable. I mean, like your laptops didn't play games. If you played a game on a computer, you were sitting here like at a console. playing a computer and playing a game, and then you get up and have to go, and you couldn't be on the internet much longer because someone would have to call and then break your internet connection because you use a dial-up line for the phone. Cell phones didn't really exist except for doctors and like super important people, quote unquote, or rich people. None of us were that when we were kids. So yeah, so there was a lot of things I think were actually, there's a benefit to delayed gratification. I think there was a benefit to even just walking around Blockbuster, man. Like I missed that. I missed that because you would organically find things through the natural means of walking physically through a store, and you'd just be in a genre, right? You'd just be in the horror section or the sci-fi section or you name it, and you'd see a cover of a box that would intrigue you, and so you pick it up and look on the read the back if you hadn't heard about it, because there was no internet for a long time, so you didn't have trailers being thrown at you left and right before a video or on YouTube or something. It didn't exist. So you either saw movie trailers in the movies and learned about it that way, or maybe you read Entertainment Weekly, magazine, and then you learn about a movie that's coming out, or a director you like to follow, or actors you like to follow, and that would lead you down a path. But anyway, you walk through a store and you'd find a box, whether it's a game or a movie, and you'd find it naturally from walking through the store. Now, so many of us live with that feed from Netflix or any streaming service you choose, and you just sort of see what's recommended through an algorithm, but you don't necessarily, I mean, eventually we all scroll through a bit, I think, but you never kind of have that natural. So I guess what I'm saying is we need VR Netflix just to walk through a store, walk through the thumbnails. Like, why hasn't someone done that yet? Like, someone make that. You probably make a lot of money doing it too. I should figure out a way to do that. But there's an organic level to finding things, discovering things, like you do in a bookstore too. Kind of the same thing. You're in a subcategory, a genre, and you see a cover you like, or you see the author's name maybe, but I don't know, the mystery of things has been taken away, I think, a little bit with the instant gratification of everything that the internet gives us. The hoping and waiting and the excitement to discover something is gone. I feel like it's rare if I'm ever in a movie now that I see a trailer for something that I don't know what it is. And that would be wise, I think, on the filmmakers to hold it off the internet for at least a while, so that when someone goes to a movie, you actually have no pre-context, you have no idea of what you're about to watch, and so you can really excite people by not knowing what is this trailer starting off with. You just have them dropped in. What is it, in res media or in media res, whatever that old ancient phrase is, which means it's in the middle of, basically. Like you drop someone off in the middle of an action sequence, kind of like a James Bond opening or something, and you're just wowed by whatever's happening, but you have no context for what it is, but it's going somewhere. And then eventually it ramps up and it crescendos with the reveal of a character everyone knows, or the reveal of a location everybody knows, or something that's intriguing, and then it makes you wonder more and more, and then by the end of it, you're like craving the answer, and then you have the title reveal or something, and it's this really big, like exciting thing. I don't have that happen much anymore. I don't think anyone does. It's very rare, unless they deliberately hold off the trailer from the internet and keep it only in theaters for a certain amount of time, which I think is very wise. And it's just a nice feeling, again, to have some excitement and surprise. It just feels like the internet has taken that away from us, and YouTube. I mean, unless you're also someone who isn't like myself and probably many of us who doesn't have YouTube on and off all the time and isn't following channels that talk about the newest news on certain topics or products, or whether it's movies or games or the rumor mill on this. Like I love keeping up on the industry news, and I also keep up on like industry finances, like when it comes to movies. I keep up on all of that a lot, so I'm aware of the numbers, and I'm aware of like what things are doing and how much they actually cost, and what the marketing costs were for things, like, because it's where I want to go in my life beyond just making CG4 films. I want to make my own films. But I'm also looking at like where is going to be an alternative to Hollywood, because I don't really think I want to be involved directly with Hollywood when it comes to funding my films. I want to do things independently to some degree, because I want creative control as much as possible, but also I just don't like the kind of corruption that's in a lot of Hollywood studios and a lot of just people there, honestly. And there's a lot of other actors who quietly say that behind closed doors, but even someone as big as on a movie I worked on that I'm proud to be a part of. We were nominated for an Oscar, actually, for Best Visual Effects, was Spider-Man: No Way Home. Tom Holland was recently quoted in saying that he doesn't really want to be a part of Hollywood anymore. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, not anymore, but he wants to go in, do his thing, and get out. Like, he doesn't want to be involved in all the other periphery of it all. So it says something, I think, for people who want to hang on to their soul. But anyway, I'm just realizing I'm a little bit over time. I don't know if anyone's on after me. I don't think so, but I should probably get going here. So I've kind of noodled a lot with the face. The rest of the body's lacking, but tends to be how I go sometimes. I just tend to enjoy putting in a fair amount of work into certain areas, and then I'll just distribute that detail down the road. But I think we got some nice distribution here. Got a nice nice setup. I think his skull is actually a bit more narrow, so I might narrow this one. But I also kind of feel like a lot of fossils just get smashed, obviously, and I think in reality they should probably be a bit wider than a lot of times they are, because sometimes I don't think animals are that narrow. But we'll see. I'll wiggle around with this next round. Anyway, yeah, there you go. There's our happy monoclonius for now. Make sure I save this guy. Let's save over the last one. All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for hanging out with me. I hope you guys had fun. I hope I didn't talk too much, but that's what you're here for, right? Let me double check. Let me just make sure right now that I'm not crushing anyone's time, because if we have time, I'll take some questions. I just don't want to. I don't want to be overstaying my welcome here, taking over anyone else's schedule. Let's check the calendar quickly. I don't know. Actually, I can't see if there's anyone else on next. I don't think there is. But anyway, I should bounce, I think, because it's probably time either way. So yeah, I think no one else is scheduled. It looks like until what is it, tomorrow? I guess. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just take some quick questions if there's anything left. It's about story, Final Fantasy game series, best for me. Games that teach virtues. Yep. I remember we had to go outside, buy games for movies. Yeah, exactly. Physically go somewhere to pick them up. GameStop. So I got a job at GameStop when I was like 16, 17. So I get a discount on the Dreamcast. So I don't know, probably like, what was I? Like, yeah, I don't know, 18? Something like that? 17, 18? I don't know. Anyway. No, it was before 16, 17. Yeah. Anyway, popcorny Blockbuster smell. Yeah, right? Redbox shot Blockbuster with a sniper rifle. Yeah. It did. It started the downfall. The Redbox was like, yeah, it was competition with Netflix for a while. And that kids who played PC games more smart than university research. Interesting. Sad. Sell your soul to give the world art. Yeah, right. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for all that. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you had fun and learned a lot about me, I guess, probably, but maybe more than you asked for. But anyway. All right, take care, and I'll probably stream again either later this month or in September. I'll probably go again this month, though. I'll see if I can probably hop in another week or two. So just keep an eye out. Follow me on IG if you want to get an update, if you are curious. And again, for those who might want to follow me, again, IG is this. Follow me at Daniel Line Arts. And yeah, I'll post when I'm going to be streaming again on there. Yeah. Stay frosty. All right, guys. Yep. Take care. Be well.